was the biggest change that happened to you as a result of making this film?
I wouldn't say changed. I don't think it made me. It encouraged me to do others.
Cool.
Yeah, to do other stories that are kind of forgotten or neglected in our history, and I would like to bring them up.
Can you give us a hint as to what one might be?
Good question. I don't know. I would invest more on the African descent, who have done a great deal in Europe, and not only in this century but the previous centuries.
Did the process of this film, how did it change you, Dave?
I don't know, being in LA, to say that I've been a little bit jaded by the film industry is probably a little cliche at this point. Well, I mean, again, I've been working in film for a while, but certainly going out and being able to tell a story and inspire people was great. And my daughter asked me to make a kids film, so maybe I can inspire some younger people as well. So, but I think it's just being able to inspire people, tell a great story, and know that you can actually do it and get it done is inspiration unto itself. Cool. The stuff that took place in the hospital was actually Sofia, Bulgaria, not Stoke Mandeville, England. But that was one of the 4 shoots, major shoots we had on the film over the course of like 2 years. The first shoot was Norway, and we went there. It was like 4 days of shooting, and we had 5 people in crew, 7 dogs, and then we went from Norway later on to Ethiopia for the first time, but we only raised enough money to shoot available light, so we couldn't bring all the lights and stuff for all the night scenes. So we shot the daytime stuff. We skipped over all the coach Oni scenes because we didn't want to get locked down to an actor that we didn't know when we'd ask them to come back and shoot with us again. And then once we had that, we put together a really beautiful mood trailer for the film, and were able to raise the rest of the money to shoot the last half of the film. So that was when we went to Bulgaria, because financial reasons, plus we thought it'd be easier to do everything for $69.70 in Sofia, Bulgaria, as opposed to England, 2000 and what year was that? 2009, 8, whatever that was. Yeah. And then we went back to Ethiopia the last time, shot all the interiors, all the night stuff, and all the Oni scenes. So we shot, as we say, from the Arctic Circle to the equator for this film.
I think growing up, as an Ethiopian, I heard a great deal about the character, but he had passed away long ago. That I just could not really understood what drove this individual to keep going and winning. And when it wasn't until I came to the United States to pursue my education that I finally said, actually I read an article written by Bud Greenspan in 1989. He was referring to his film that he did with his wife that we have included actually in that was actually screened in Ethiopia, Addis Ababa in 1972. That was a film that Bud Greenspan is an American Olympic historian who has done something about Bikila and the marathon, the history of the marathon. So I read an article about him, just a 1-page, a very moving article, and I said, maybe it's time to revisit this story, because he comes from my end of the world and from my part of the world, and his story is as great as the Jim Thorpe, Jesse Owens, Jackie Robinson, and all these great Americans that I always see at night on A&E and their stories. But, and I always felt that his story was a little bit different because there was that bare feet, and that he was also paraplegic, and also he was the first one to also participate, not only as an Olympian, but also as a Paralympian, pretty much. And so I thought there was something, and he was at the same time neglected. And I said, I think it's about time to bring him out, and share it with Americans, because I know this is a story of an underdog. They would always like it. They would always inspire them, encourage them, and those are the things that inspired me to make this film.
We wrote the script in English because I don't speak Amharic. I can count to 10. And so in doing that, we were trying to decide whether we should do the film in English, do it in Amharic. Obviously, you put subtitles on a film for the United States, you cut your viewership in half, 2/3, whatever the statistic is. And so we actually, I mean, going back even a step, originally it wasn't clear that Ross was going to play the part. We had sent Ross to Ethiopia to shoot some casting videotapes, and I met Ross in New York. We went to Ethiopian food, as we do, and I walked in, and Ross, instead of handing me tapes to watch, handed me a letter. And the letter was a page, 2 pages back front, that was Ross explaining why he should play the role of a Bikila. And you know, Ross at the time had never acted in a film before, but has since won Best Actor awards at the Brooklyn Film Festival. And yeah, you see how great his work was. So I sat there across from him for the meal, thinking, holy moly, are we really going to go and do this? But sitting there watching him and just talking to him and feeling his passion about the story and just looking in his eyes, it was clear that, you know, he was the person to play the role, and not to mention scheduling would not be a problem. So we went forward and did it with Ross, but having not been an actor formally in films before, we thought it'd be good for him to sit down with an acting coach for a couple of sessions and to get a feel for the back and forth between a director or a coach and the actor. And so he sat down for a couple of sessions with a coach in New York, and he did the first couple without me present. He just wanted to sort of get his feet underneath him with it. And then I came and sat in, and it was clear that Ross wasn't exactly Ross when he was speaking the English lines. And so I said, why don't you try and speak the Amharic and just have the coach respond in English based on the script. And as soon as he started speaking Amharic, it was clear that he became like a different character. So at that point we realized, like, this is how we have to shoot the film. And so then the question became, how do you build that weave? Because the next step of the problem was, how do you find a Swedish actor that speaks Amharic? And obviously that was not in the cards. So it was all about designing the script in a way that you sort of flowed into it. And then we would just be feeding the Swedish guy, Dag, in the movie, Amharic on set, like just before we did the take. And so he'd just say a sentence or two in Amharic, and it was that little blend that we created this sort of seamless weave that we feel works for the film, and you don't really feel like it's two different languages, it's just people communicating soulfully to each other.
Amazing.
Started, as I said, on and off since 1991, I must say. And it was fascinating talking to his close friends, you know, who've known him 35 years ago, 40 years ago, and meeting people that he has visited, you know, just for a few seconds before the accident. His close families that were living still in the mountain, and his childhood friends. And it was a thrill. That's part of all the film elements. What I like to do is just the research and the writing aspect of it is something that appeals to me. But I must say that finding all these new little things, it's more like investigative kind of research, because this thing happened 30, 40 years ago. Some of it 50 years ago, because of Rome is 1960. And yeah, it was fascinating.
I mean, when we started talking about the character, actually, I asked Ross to go see Pickpocket by Bresson, because he worked with characters that didn't say much, that were really non-actors, and it was really all about that sort of internal thing that you're watching, mostly in their faces. And so we sort of wanted to internalize the character and also the fact that we were concentrating on the day of the accident where he was not with his family, and then the time when he was in rehab. And at that time, in 1969, 70, people weren't just flying back and forth. Like, people didn't just go visit you in the hospital in England. So it was sort of circumstantial on that level. We actually had talked about shooting a scene at the house before he gets in the car with the coach at the end of the movie. But then when we started writing it, it kind of felt like we were just like throwing in the family at the end of the film, and so we decided actually not to shoot that scene. So I'd say it was sort of more the way the script developed than anything else. Well, I mean, Ross had actually, when I met Ross through a mutual friend in New York, they had been talking at a dinner party in New York, and Jonathan suggested that Ross and I meet because I had studied in Kenya and shot some documentary films in Kenya. And so when I met Ross, he had started a script with his cousin, who's also credited as a screenwriter on the film. And that was an idea that Ross had already in his head, because he had watched these old Olympic films to watch the character run and do these things. So when we started off and started from scratch again, sort of from the beginning with the script again, that was already a part of it, and we knew what elements we wanted to have in the movie. And so a lot of the transitions are worked into the script and are shot to match. And then also, just because Ross was acting, it was important that we had a lot of things played out beforehand so that he could concentrate on the acting. I could concentrate on the production side of things and capturing what we had, but that we were both still on page. So a lot of discussions happened before we would shoot. And like I said, it happened 4 different shoots over time. So we had months beforehand to talk about parts of the script, as opposed to going out and shooting the whole thing in one big chunk and trying to plan everything ahead of time. We were kind of doing it in pieces.